Don't just hear my voice. Really take in what I'm about to say, because in the next few minutes, I want to share something that has quietly changed the direction of countless lives. It's simple, yet so powerful that many people overlook it completely, only to realize later how deeply it was shaping them all along. I remember one morning standing by my office window, watching my own reflection, when a realization struck me. Every day we speak thousands upon thousands of words, around 16,000 on average. But the real question that hit me was this: how many of those words are actually directed toward ourselves? And even more important, what kind of language are we using when no one else is listening? Your mind is not just an organ or a passive observer. It works more like the most advanced system ever created, constantly processing everything you say, think, and feel. Right now, as you listen, it is absorbing every bit of it. But here is the part most people never fully understand. Your mind doesn't just hear your words, it accepts them. It treats them as instructions for reality. There is a principle in life as constant as gravity itself, yet most people go through their days completely unaware of it. The way you speak to yourself in quiet moments, when there is no audience, no validation, no pressure, is directly shaping the direction of your life. Those inner words are not harmless thoughts. They are quietly constructing your future, one belief at a time. Across my journey, I've met people from all walks of life and different parts of the world. And I noticed something consistent among those who achieved extraordinary success. They weren't just lucky or gifted. They had trained themselves to speak to their own minds in a way that aligned with the life they wanted to build. Their self-talk became a tool of creation rather than limitation. The most important truth here is that this ability is not reserved for a select few. It is not a rare talent. It is a learnable skill. Anyone can develop it. And if practiced with consistency, even a few days can begin to shift how your mind operates. Your brain is constantly forming patterns based on repetition. Over time, these patterns become mental highways. If you've repeatedly told yourself things like, "I'm not capable," or "this isn't for me," your mind creates strong neural roots that automatically lead you back to those beliefs without question. They feel natural only because they've been repeated so often. But the encouraging part is this: what was learned can also be unlearned. And what was built can be rebuilt. Even within a short span of time, like a few days, you can begin forming new pathways by intentionally changing the way you speak to yourself. Think about how a seed works. The moment it is planted in the right soil, change begins instantly, even if you cannot see it yet. Growth doesn't wait for visibility. It begins at the very moment conditions are right. Your mind works in the same way. The moment you introduce new thoughts and new language, the process of transformation has already started beneath the surface. Science has shown that the brain responds to imagination and reality in surprisingly similar ways. When you consistently speak or think in a certain pattern, your brain begins to respond as though it is true in the present moment. This means your inner dialogue is not passive. It is actively shaping your emotional state, your decisions, and even your behavior. For example, when someone wakes up and repeatedly says, "I am tired," the mind doesn't simply observe that statement. It begins to align the body's chemistry with it. Energy drops, motivation weakens, and the body follows the instruction. On the other hand, when someone shifts their language to something more empowering, the entire internal response begins to adjust over time. Your subconscious mind processes enormous amounts of information every second, but it relies heavily on repetition and language patterns to decide what matters. That means the phrases you repeat most often become the instructions your inner system follows automatically. I once worked with someone who believed they were naturally bad with numbers. For years, that belief shaped how they reacted to anything involving finances. The moment spreadsheets appeared, their mind would shut down before even trying. But when they began shifting their inner language, replacing "I can't understand this" with "I am learning this step by step," something began to change. Slowly at first, then noticeably. Their confidence grew and their ability followed. This is because your mind builds itself based on the instructions you give it. Think of it like a construction site. Nothing gets built without a blueprint. Your words are that blueprint. They determine what your inner world is shaping into over time. When you say things like, "I am improving every day," you are not pretending. You are directing your mind toward growth. You are giving it a path to follow. In contrast, every time you say, "I can't," or "this is impossible," you are not just expressing doubt, you are reinforcing a boundary inside your own thinking. These mental barriers are not physical, but they are powerful because they are reinforced repeatedly. The good news is that repetition can also dismantle them. With new repetition comes new structure. With new structure comes new potential. The real shift happens when you begin to understand that your words are not just expressions, they are instructions. And once you begin to consciously choose those instructions, your entire internal system starts responding differently. You don't need dramatic change overnight. You only need consistency in a new direction, because even small repeated shifts in how you speak to yourself begin to reshape the architecture of your mind. And over time, what once felt impossible begins to feel natural, not because the world changed instantly, but because you did. I want you to really understand something at a deeper level. The mental limits you experience today were not placed there overnight. They were built slowly, through repetition, through the same thoughts being played again and again until they started to feel like truth. When someone keeps telling themselves, "I'm not good enough," the first time it doesn't feel real. The second time it still feels like a doubt. But when that message is repeated for months or years, the mind begins to accept it as identity. Not because it is true, but because it has been rehearsed so often. And here is the powerful part. Whatever was created through repetition can also be undone through repetition. Think of a single drop of water hitting a rock. At first, it looks meaningless. No impact, no change. But when that same drop keeps falling in the exact same place, over and over again, something begins to shift. Slowly but surely, the rock starts to wear down. Eventually, it breaks through. That is exactly how your inner transformation works. The words you repeatedly speak to yourself become that steady force. At first, they may feel small, even insignificant. But when they are consistent, they begin to dissolve the strongest internal resistance. Your brain has something remarkable built into it, its ability to rewire itself. This is known as neuroplasticity. In simple terms, it means your brain is not fixed. It is constantly changing based on how you use it, what you focus on, and most importantly, what you repeatedly tell yourself. Every time you introduce a new thought pattern, you are not just thinking differently for a moment. You are physically shaping new connections in your brain. You are creating new routes for your mind to travel on. New patterns of response, new emotional reactions, and new possibilities for behavior. This is why your internal language matters so much. It is not just emotional expression. It is structural programming. And this is where things become even more important. When you apply this understanding with consistency over a short, focused period, like 3 days, you begin to create a shift that your mind cannot ignore. Because transformation doesn't always require long periods of time. What it requires is intensity, clarity, and repetition without interruption. Your current thought patterns are like deep tracks carved into the mind over years. The more you repeated certain beliefs, the deeper those tracks became. So now, your thoughts naturally fall into those same patterns without effort. But the goal is not to fight those old patterns directly. Fighting them only strengthens them. Instead, the real solution is to build new pathways strong enough that your mind gradually starts choosing them instead. This is why the idea of 3 days is so powerful. It is not random. It is enough time to interrupt automatic thinking, but short enough to maintain strong focus without losing direction. On the first day of change, your mind will resist. It will feel unnatural to think differently about yourself. Old thoughts will rise up strongly because they are familiar. They will try to pull you back into the same loop you have been running for years. That resistance is normal. It is just your mind reacting to change. On the second day, something interesting happens. The resistance begins to weaken. Your old thought patterns start to feel slightly less dominant. It is not that they disappear, but they no longer feel as powerful as before. This is where your new way of thinking starts to settle in more naturally. By the third day, a shift becomes noticeable. Your mind begins to adjust. Instead of automatically rejecting new thoughts, it starts exploring them. It even begins to look for evidence that supports them. This is the turning point where internal change starts feeling real. What is happening here is not imagination. It is mental conditioning in real time. Think of it like pushing a heavy object. At first, it takes everything you have just to move it slightly. But once it starts moving, each push becomes easier. Eventually, momentum builds, and what once felt impossible begins to move with flow. Your mind works in the same way. Years of thinking created resistance, but consistent new thinking begins to build momentum in a different direction. During these 3 days, you are not trying to destroy old thoughts through force. Instead, you are training your mind to follow a new direction so consistently that it slowly loses interest in the old one. It is like changing a channel. You are not breaking the television. You are simply choosing a different broadcast and sticking with it long enough for your attention to shift completely. And this is where precision becomes important. The words you choose during this process matter. They are not casual statements. They are instructions being given to your subconscious mind. For example, instead of saying, "I am trying to improve," you begin to speak from certainty and direction. Instead of struggle, you speak from flow. Instead of limitation, you speak from development. When your internal voice says, "I am not ready," you don't argue with it. You redirect it. You shift it into something like, "I am growing into my readiness every day." You are not denying reality, you are guiding it forward. When fear appears, you don't suppress it. You transform its meaning. Instead of identifying with fear, you begin to say, "I am becoming more steady with every moment." The energy stays, but its direction changes. This is not about pretending life is perfect. It is about training your mind to move toward the version of you that is expanding, not shrinking. Because every time you repeat a new statement with intention, your brain starts building pathways around it. Slowly, your internal system begins to align with that direction. Even your reflection becomes part of this process. When you look at yourself, instead of reinforcing doubt or limitation, you begin to speak growth into your identity. You say things that reinforce progress, strength, and direction, not as wishful thinking, but as intentional reprogramming. Over time, something powerful happens. The mind stops resisting the new pattern and starts cooperating with it. And when that happens, change stops feeling forced. It starts feeling natural. And that is the real transformation. Not just changing what you think, but changing what your mind automatically believes without effort. Because once your internal language changes, your perception changes. And once your perception changes, your entire experience of life begins to follow. When you understand this deeply, everything begins to shift. The way you respond to life, the way you interpret challenges, even the way you see yourself, it all changes depending on the language you choose internally. From this moment, your response to everything must carry a new meaning. This is happening for my growth, not against me. Feel the difference between those two perspectives. One creates struggle and limitation. The other creates strength and expansion. One keeps you trapped in a victim mindset. The other moves you into the position of a creator. Your mind naturally follows the direction of your strongest and most repeated thoughts. It doesn't argue. It simply obeys what is dominant. That's why what you repeatedly say to yourself becomes your internal reality over time. Even before you sleep, the words you choose matter. When you lie down at night, instead of letting your mind wander into stress or replaying problems, you can gently guide it by saying something like, "While I rest, my mind is reorganizing itself for greater success." Your subconscious does not switch off, it continues working. And the language you give it becomes the instructions it follows through the night. And when setbacks appear, because they always will, your inner response must evolve. Instead of labeling them as failure, you begin to say, "This is not failure. This is feedback guiding my growth." That small shift opens space in your mind where there used to be blockage. It turns pressure into learning and confusion into direction. But this only works when it is spoken with full belief. Half-hearted words create weak results. Your internal dialogue must carry conviction, not hesitation. When you say things like, "I am becoming unstoppable," it should feel like a statement of truth, not a wish. The more emotionally aligned you are with your words, the deeper they penetrate your subconscious mind. There is something important to understand here. Success is not just about what you say out loud. It is about the emotional energy behind those words. When you say, "I am worthy of extraordinary success," your entire system, mind, body, nervous system, responds to that emotional intensity. It begins to adjust itself around that belief. And this is where timing becomes powerful. There are specific moments in your day when your mind is more open, more receptive, more programmable. If you use those moments correctly, change becomes much easier. The first moment is your morning. The instant you wake up, before your mind is filled with external noise, before messages, responsibilities, and distractions enter your awareness, that is when your mind is most impressionable. Instead of immediately reaching for your phone or jumping into your day, pause. Take a few deep breaths. In those breaths, you are not just waking your body, you are setting your inner state. You are deciding how your day will begin energetically. The first words you speak in the morning matter more than people realize. If you begin with heaviness, the day follows that tone. But if you begin with intention and strength, everything that follows aligns differently. So instead of waking with complaints or fatigue, you begin with something like, "I am awakening to my highest potential." And as you say it, you allow yourself to feel it, not just repeat it. Because your body responds to emotion far more than empty words. Then, when you look at yourself in the mirror, you reinforce it again. I am becoming more powerful with every breath. Success is natural for me. Growth flows through me easily. These are not just statements, they are internal instructions that begin shaping how you carry yourself throughout the day. Even your daily routines become part of this process. While showering, instead of letting your mind drift into worry or planning stress, you redirect it. You might say internally, I am releasing all limitations. I am clearing doubt and replacing it with strength. The mind begins to associate even simple actions with transformation. As you step into your day, your intention must be clear but expansive. Not just, I want a good day, but something deeper like, today, everything I experience is moving me closer to my purpose. Every interaction, every challenge is contributing to my growth. Before leaving your space, take a grounded moment. Feel your connection to stability and possibility and affirm something like, I am rooted in my strength and open to infinite opportunities. This is not imagination, it is direction setting. When you live this way, your morning is no longer random. It becomes intentional programming for the rest of your day. You are no longer reacting to life, you are setting the tone for it. As your day unfolds, carry this awareness with you. Let your internal language stay aligned with strength and clarity. Instead of slipping back into old patterns like doubt or fatigue, gently return to phrases that keep you centered, such as, I am becoming more focused, more capable, more aligned with success. These words are not just affirmations. They are ongoing instructions to your subconscious mind, shaping how you respond moment to moment. And as evening arrives, your growth does not stop, it simply shifts form. This becomes a time for reflection and integration. Instead of ignoring your inner dialogue from the day, you observe it. You ask yourself how you spoke to yourself, what language you used during challenges, and how you responded internally. This is not about judgment. It is about awareness and adjustment. For every limiting thought you catch, you consciously replace it. If at any point you told yourself, I am not enough, you now reframe it into something stronger and more constructive like, I am expanding into my potential every day. This process reinforces your new mental direction. You are not just trying to think differently, you are training your mind to default to a stronger identity. And over time, this consistency changes everything. The mind begins to follow new patterns automatically. What once required effort becomes natural. What once felt forced becomes your default way of thinking. Because in the end, your life is not shaped by occasional thoughts, it is shaped by repeated ones. And when your repetition changes, your reality follows. What I want you to understand deeply is this. The way you end your day is just as powerful as the way you begin it. Your evening is not a time of shutdown, it is a time of internal rebuilding. In these quieter hours, your mind becomes more open, more receptive, more suggestible. That means the words you speak to yourself now don't just stay as thoughts. They begin to shape how your brain organizes itself while you sleep. So when you say something like, today's experiences have made me stronger, you are not just reflecting on your day. You are actively rewiring your inner world. Your mind takes that message and starts forming new connections around it, reinforcing strength instead of weakness, progress instead of limitation. This is where transformation becomes very real. Instead of replaying the day's difficulties and emotionally reliving them, you begin to reframe them. You start to see every challenge as preparation, Every difficult moment becomes evidence that you are developing, not breaking. So your inner language shifts. Instead of, "This was hard," it becomes, "This experience is building me for something greater." Instead of, "I failed," it becomes, "This gave me clarity and direction." Over time, that shift changes how your brain stores experience itself. And in this state, you prepare not just to end the day, but to design the next one. Before sleep, your words become intentional. You begin to speak as if tomorrow is already aligned with your growth. Not in a forced or artificial way, but in a calm, confident direction. Something like, "Tomorrow is already moving in my favor. My potential is expanding. I am stepping into greater alignment with my goals." When you say this, you are not trying to control the future. You are setting your mind's focus for it. Your subconscious continues working even while you rest. It organizes thoughts, processes emotions, and looks for patterns. And the language you give it becomes the material it uses. That is why even simple statements like, "While I sleep, my mind is organizing itself for success," carry power. You are giving your inner system direction for the night. This is also the moment to acknowledge progress. Not in a dramatic way, but in a grounded way. You can simply recognize, "I am growing. I am moving forward. I am becoming more than I was yesterday." These statements reinforce identity, not just motivation. And before sleep, you can even use imagination intentionally. Picture yourself living with more clarity, handling situations with calmness, achieving what you are working toward. The mind responds strongly to vivid imagery. It doesn't fully separate imagination from experience. So what you repeatedly visualize begins to feel familiar. This is why what you fall asleep thinking about matters. It becomes the emotional and mental environment your subconscious works with through the night. So instead of ending the day with stress or unresolved thoughts, you guide your mind into a direction of growth and stability. You plant the idea that progress is ongoing, not paused. And as this becomes a habit, something shifts. Your nights start to feel like preparation instead of escape. Your mornings start to feel like continuation instead of restart. Now, as you move deeper into this practice, you begin to realize something important. Your life is not shaped in distant moments. It is shaped in these small, repeated internal decisions. Even right now, in this moment, there is a turning point. Between the version of you that reacts automatically and the version of you that consciously chooses response. The power is always in the next thought you allow to continue.